All right, welcome to the Bryce Eddy Show. So today I've got Baker Leavitt on. He's from Black Rifle Coffee, Vote for America. And we got a couple of subjects I want to talk about here. I think we're going to talk some war stuff too, I'm sure. But we're going to talk about the benefits of international assistance. And by that, hey, should America get involved overseas and, do things to, garner favor on the world stage? I think he and I are going to mostly agree, but we probably got a couple of points of disagreement. So this is going to be a fun conversation. Baker, welcome
Yes,
to the
sir.
show.
Thanks for having me. Happy to be here.
Yeah. Yeah, of course, man. I'm glad. And I know like me, you can talk about anything. So I certainly want to get maybe your high level thoughts on what's happening over in Iran right now and what you think about that.
Yeah, I'm
Because that's in the news, man. By the time this thing is
excited.
posting, maybe the war is over. Maybe we're in World War III. I don't know.
I'm excited about it, dude. I am beside myself. I'm so excited. And here's why. I think of all the countries in that part of the world where the populace still maintains an IQ above room temperature, where I am hopeful that the people of Iran, with some assistance, I'm not saying from us, I'm not saying from who, I'm just saying with the right push, I do think that's the one regime change that could probably stick. Because you think about Afghanistan, IQ is 60 points, maybe less. Iraq, that's this Department of the State's fault, going in and getting rid of Saddam, immediately removing the Ba'ath Party, which has created a power vacuum right there.
That's right.
Syria, dude, I don't really know enough about it. I know that Assad had, before him was his father. But like if you look at, and I'm by no means a subject matter expert, so anyone listening, this is just my opinion. When you look at where Iran was in the 70s, before I think it was the Shah came into power.
Yeah. 1979, I believe, is the
Yeah,
Iranian Revolution.
yeah. Thank you, Jimmy Carter. Way to go. It's a shame he died before he could see his legacy really come to fruition. What an idiot. But I do think that's if the right things happen and the right shoes fall and the right dominoes fall, I do think there could be some positive change in the Middle East. I do think that most of the countries in the Middle East are sick of Iran. Um, I do think the Middle East, by and large, wants peace, and I do think the greatest barrier to peace in that region has been Iran and their proxies. That's
Yeah,
just my opinion. I'm not a
well, I
subject
think
matter.
you're correct. I mean, I think your opinion is grounded in some solid facts and some common sense there. We do know prior to the Ayatollah, there was a really relatively beautiful democracy, Western style democracy, or close enough to it, in Iran. And, the women weren't oppressed. They were getting to go to school. I mean, it looked like America. If you go and you watch some of the footage, I mean, it's pretty amazing. And then the oppressive religious regime of the Ayatollah came in and destroyed them and destroyed that country. And they've been the most consistent antagonist in the Middle East against us and Israel. And that's right, funding proxies and other things. And vying for nuclear power and everything else that we do not want them to have. I think you probably, might share these sentiments with me, but I don't want to send our troops over there to do it. I think Israel is highly capable of waging this war. I think we can help, being the big brother culture. I think we can help with economic sanctions and economic pressure and all of those sort of things that is going to tie into some of the subject that you and I are going to talk about. But we definitely do not want to see the Ayatollah remain in power. At least I don't. And I think it's in America's best interest and the world's best interest and the Middle East's best
Yeah,
interest.
but I don't want him assassinated. Do no, hold on. Backtrack. Would I love to see someone kill him? Absolutely. I would watch. Send me the video. I'll watch it.
Yeah.
I will cheer. I don't care how gruesome it is. I'm fine with that. What I don't want to see is I don't want to see the Ayatollah assassinated by Israelis or Americans. Because
Yeah, I want to see the people, and there's enough of them within. There is enough, pressure from within, and alternate factions that would like to see it go back to pre 1979.
oh
And
yeah,
I think we need to fan those internal flames. And I've talked about this a lot. The fault of exporting all of the young single males, asylum seekers out of all of those places, is that you don't have people capable of fomenting and forming their own internal revolutions. And that's what we need to see there. We need to see the people rise up, so that there isn't an ugly power vacuum of just the next guy in line to the Ayatollah doing the same thing. We need to see a positive revolution. And I think
yeah,
you and I agree on that.
absolutely. I'm fearful that if the Ayatollah was assassinated or killed by Jews or Americans, that would stoke the Muslim extremist jihad, holy war type stuff. Like if he's going to be removed, it needs to be by his people, like just like they did Gaddafi. Dig him
Right.
out of a sewer hole, and what they did to him, they did some pretty nasty stuff to him. But yeah, I would love, but American boots on the ground over there, outside of like our tip top units that operate very clandestinely and in small groups. No, absolutely not. I don't think. I think I think we as a society are smart enough that we learned that when you know Americans put boots on the ground and engage in combat in Arab countries, that it's a rally call for their Arab brothers and sisters to come fight jihad, fight the infidel, fight the invaders. So I don't want to see Israeli troops on the ground. I don't want to see American troops on the ground over there. I want to
Yeah.
see. Listen, man, I think Israel is paving the way for positive change. But yeah, it's just, like it's up to the people to reach out and to grab it and take it. I
And
know
if
that.
we did a better job, look, the CIA, unfortunately, and I think again, a lot of this stuff is going to dovetail into some of our conversations here. But the CIA manipulated so many of these countries behind the scenes to try to place leaders in that they felt were more malleable for United States interests. And I want to see sovereign countries around the world. I don't want to see everything controlled by the United States. I think that's bad. I think that ultimately ruins us. And I'd like to get your thoughts on this. But what you're saying there, if we do it right, meaning that you kind of let you encourage and not place, but you encourage the right kind of leaders and revolutionaries. I think there's ways that you can do that responsibly. And listen to, Patrick Bet David's done a couple of touches on this quite recently. He's a Syrian, fled Iran himself when he was young. Talks very intelligently about that. Has had the king and others that were kind of heir to Iran pre 1979 revolution, and there are people that are poised there that can responsibly take over
Yeah, I
and
think.
aren't just shills for our intelligence services.
Yeah, it wasn't. I think the prince
Hmm.
who's been living in Maryland for the
Yeah.
past however many years. Um, yeah, I think that it's one of those situations. Like I'll give you an example. I think the people of Iran want it. One of my buddy's mother-in-laws, she lives in America, and she just happened to be back in Iran visiting on vacation. Won't come home. She's like, "I'm not leaving. This is great. Everything's fine." They're like,
Hmm.
"We need to get you out of there." She's like, "Not leaving. Nope. I'm here for this one. Front row seat. Front row seat."
Hmm.
Which I thought was
Amen.
pretty awesome. I thought was pretty
Yeah.
badass. Like, yeah,
Yeah,
good
my
for you.
my uncle's Iranian, and he's my favorite uncle, and came here because of the 1979 revolution. He, fled here to the United States, and I haven't gotten his take yet on it, but yeah, I know that there's so many people that are cheering, that fled during that revolution here in the U.S. and many people are very much behind what Israel is doing right now, and very much understanding that Iran has been the aggressors behind so much of the world's or the Middle East's unrest.
Yeah. Well, look at the IEDs and stuff. I mean, they basically came in and enhanced the and the GWAT, the IEDs and whatnot, the different types of IEDs. That was all Iran, all that technology and science and engineering behind all that modern stuff that injured and killed and crippled so many of our
Yeah.
soldiers. That's directly tied into them, which
Yep.
is kind of interesting, like because Iraq kept Iran in check, and Iran kept Iraq in check. Like those two countries hated each other
Yep.
until we invaded Iraq, and then we removed the Ba'ath Party, which created
Yeah,
instability.
and that's why I'm talking. I mean, so much of that was the fault of our intelligence communities, the fault of the warmongers, the fault of the people that get tremendously wealthy, by kind of waging endless wars, which I'm against.
Lindsey Graham specifically. Yeah,
what's that?
Lindsey Graham specifically.
Yeah, yeah, that guy is a complete turd, and he's in the pocket of all of those folks.
But can he not read the room? He's
Yeah.
the only person on social media that I see that is the only person advocating for war. I see people like cheering on like surgical strikes, but like he is ringing the bell like war. I've never seen anything like it. I turned 50 in August. I think we're 2 days apart in age. In all my years, I've never seen a person just consequences be damned, just pushing for something that everyone else is completely against. It blows my mind.
Yeah, no, I mean, he's a complete shill, and they've funded him for so long, and I mean, it's pretty well known that that's who that guy is. All right, well, let's talk about kind of the subject at hand, because this is a perfect segue. Should we be spending money all over the world in international assistance? And I think, again, you and I are pretty close on this subject, but you have a quote here that I'm going to read. I wore the uniform to protect this country. What keeps us safe today isn't just what we do on the battlefield. It's how we lead around the world. Strategic international assistance isn't charity. It's about keeping the fight off our shores, keeping our troops out of war, and making sure America stays on top. I generally agree with that statement. Where I have trouble, and this is what I'm hoping you can help me to reconcile, is we waste so much in those efforts that we have become the the big brother of the world that is paying the bill for everything everywhere, and there is no accountability on these things, and there is so much secret work that goes on that is complete foolishness. And we've seen that with some of what USAID did. We've seen that with how much our intelligence community has manipulated things like we just talked about, and not in good faith, but have actually fanned the flames of unrest or done things like they did in Iraq. So how do we do this responsibly, and how do we monitor it? And what are your thoughts on that, man?
I think you have to have radical transparency and accountability. And when I say accountability, I mean there has to be accountability to John Q taxpayer. Radical transparency, John Q taxpayer does not need that. There are certain things that your average citizen doesn't need to know. Okay.
Well, because they couldn't understand, and I mean, unfortunately, many of our citizens are, the masses are asses, and some of them will never understand the Game of Thrones, the movements that do need to happen behind the scenes.
Right. So I think you have to have radical transparency within the administration that is in charge, and then I believe you have to have accountability to John Q taxpayer. The problem is when we look at how Doge was revealing a lot of the the waste, fraud, and abuse, everything was being publicized. And for example, like, $50 million to Bangladeshian transgender vegan yogurt making.
Right.
That's not what that money's for. You know what I
Right.
mean? Like, that's just the little Zoomer who's trying to be cutesy. And when they were putting a note for accounting purposes on that invoice, on payment, whatever you want to call it, they put that weird stuff on there because they can't put on there like paying off, two different warlords in Mali, or the Congo or whatever. But I think the intelligence community has to be reined in, because I think a lot of what society sees, and I'm guilty of it, is like it's an argument from a position of authority. Oh, it's the CIA. Oh, it's the NSA. Like, oh, we can't question them. Like, oh, super spooky stuff. It's all classified. It's all top secret. Fair enough. But I do think that, like I said, they have to be accountable to someone within the government, and someone needs to oversee all of that spend and needs to approve it. Like, I don't think, like, if you look at, there's a ton of stuff. There's a lot of foreign aid that we do that's really, really good. And I think they just got to clean up their track record. I just don't think the track record's great. Like, look at governments that we've tinkered with and people that we've put in place, which you were talking about earlier, because we thought we'd be able to influence them down the road. Well, that's not the case. You may
Right.
have some guy that's like, oh yeah, I'm going to do whatever you guys say. You get me in power, I work for you. The moment that was it, absolute power corrupts absolutely, or
Yep.
something like that. So you take someone, you put them in power, they're not listening to you. They're in power. They're the boss
Right.
at that point. You know what I mean? They don't care. So I don't have to answer your question, radical transparency within the existing administration, and then accountability to John Q. taxpayer.
Okay.
I don't think that's, and dude, I think one of my things is I try to simplify stuff as much as possible and just slow the game down and dumb it down. But I think, to my personal opinion, there's foreign aid that is so incredibly valuable to what we do as a country that I am willing to waste money to protect that. Okay. However, that's not necessary. You know what I mean? But I will say this: there's foreign aid that we do that is so incredibly valuable. To get rid of it would be a travesty.
Yeah, well, okay, and I'm all for identifying some of those things, and I am all for the theory of playing a good offense as a defense, right?
Oh, yeah.
I'm all for using our economic power to keep peace. And create people who are beholden unto us and must make good decisions. Otherwise, they will not get our money. But yet, we haven't done that. Many of these countries that have not fulfilled any of their obligations to us, or have taken our money, wasted it, enriched themselves. I mean, you look at so much of what Zelensky has done to line his own pockets.
Oh, wow,
We have made many of these allies incredibly wealthy, and they have not upheld their end of the deal. Or we have done deals with many of these foreign countries, and they have refused to hold up their. I mean, some of our biggest allies have not paid their own bills.
Look at NATO. Look at NATO.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. Perfect example. And that has categorically been the case. We have been that big brother, putting down the credit card in this case over and over again. We're not flush with the cash anymore.
Right.
We're putting down the credit card. We're going into deeper and deeper debt. We're approaching this dramatic iceberg. And all of these folks are lining their own pockets with that cash.
That's infuriating to me, by the way. Let me jump back a real quick second. If we're giving money, like, let's use Ukraine for example, you don't get free money. You can have 100-year loan with no interest, but you're going to pay it back in some capacity. Like, I think the days of just giving a blank checkbook, just giving billions and hundreds and tens of billions of dollars away. No, why would we give Ukraine $200 billion without any form of debt repayment. I understand giving them like old munitions that are like on the verge of expiring, or yeah, sure, whatever.
Yeah.
We send a bunch of cluster bombs over there or something, things that we don't use anymore. But Trump said it best, like, lend them the money, give them 100 years to pay it back with no interest. But like just the days of just doling it out. Yeah, a good example.
Yeah, or listen, I mean, hey, they have resources that we can pre-buy from them. I love the idea of, doing a deal where we say, okay, here's what we want from you. And oh, by the way, that puts us in a strong position to tell Russia to knock it off, because now you are, coming after some of our interests, and then that creates, some of those, diplomatic collisions that we're not just, arguing on behalf of the Ukrainians, but we're also arguing on behalf of American interests.
Yeah, like building some type of a mine with them, 50-50 partnership. We'll come in, build it, develop it,
Yeah.
And run it, and then you guys will turn it over for you to run it, but we'll split the profits 50-50.
That's smart business.
Yeah. Russia, no bombs here.
Yeah.
This is all mine. There's Americans here. Very bad. So that's my answer to that question.
Okay. I think that's fair. When I'm looking at this, though, we still have the issue with the impending iceberg that we are approaching. I mean, America is at this point bankrupt. And, you made a comment here in your paper that, you don't want us to cancel already approved funds and some of those sort of things. But I'm okay, with us reneging on bad deals. And so many of our previous administrations, I mean, I think you might, and I don't want to anticipate your argument, but if we do too much of that, then our word is meaningless. But there are things that are just complete fraud. I think one of the ones that was posted out there was, we were giving $2 million to a lady that was teaching Afghani women about modern art, and there's videos of her doing this, and we canceled that contract, and the British politician who's the wife of this particular lady was, he was all miffed, and he's like, well, the government, they owe us $2 million for my wife's fabulous work teaching about modern art, and one of the things that she was teaching was like art, that somebody did a toilet install at a museum, and she's teaching that to Afghani women. And you can see in the room, these ladies are looking around like, what is this? Not understanding.
Yeah.
They don't even use toilets. They don't even know what this is. And they're talking, I mean, it's foolishness. And so there are things like that I want us to say, nope.
No, so there's existing things that kind of fall into the, I would call, cutesy mislabeled category that are super important. And, there's warlords and this deal and that deal that you can't renege on. But there are certain deals where you can say, is this classified? Is this top secret? Is this secret squirrel stuff? What is this money going to? And there's two piles. There's the do something about it if you don't like it, which is the ones that we terminate. And then there's the ones that are like, oh, got it. Right on. Yes, this one will go through. The art stuff and the weird stuff that like doesn't hide behind the veil of secrecy, terminate it. Who cares if that guy's mad? I hope he is mad. In fact, I'd send him a bill for $2 million for wasting our time. You know what I mean? Like, hey, we had to waste time looking at this. We're sending you a bill for our accountants. Yeah.
Yeah, or I mean, right now, listen, half of these LA riots were bought and paid for. They were not organic movements, and you have many of these organizations that last year got a $22 million grant from the government, and this year was $45 million grant. Now, not all of that is used for the riots, but it's for these organizations that are supporting these things.
Yes, I think those were state grants. I don't think there were any federal grants, but that's not a hill I want to die on.
Yeah, I saw some that appeared to be federal
For
grants,
some federal,
but yeah, state grants are plenty of
yeah,
those. So
you,
yeah, you're not wrong
yeah.
there.
So those NGOs, and this is just what I've heard around, DC is like you have a lot of elected officials and you have a lot of bureaucrats whose family members get jobs at those NGOs and get paid a ton of money.
Yep.
Listen, I don't have any problem on this planet selling access. I sell access. Like, I introduce people constantly. That's what I do. Um, Sometimes I do deals where I get paid for stuff, but like it's never like a quid pro quo. But I'm just kind of using the generic term selling access. I have no problem with someone making money because they know people. Okay, that's a skill, it's a talent. Where I have a problem is people getting paid just because they know someone. Like, would I have a problem with Hunter Biden being on Burisma's board if he knew about oil and gas?
Right.
No, not really. I don't really give a shit.
Well,
But
look, nepotism, access. I mean, look, I'm not wholesale opposed to that,
right,
because that is the way the world works. That's why you
absolutely.
work hard so that you
Yes.
can, help and support your family. And,
Yeah.
like I interviewed a guy on my show that was in charge of one of our local private school organizations, or he was office there. And, my middle daughter's a very talented music teacher. And, she had to interview and she had to wow them. And, she was a tremendous hire for them and they could not be happier here a year later. But I, made a couple of phone calls and got her front of the line so that she could do that,
That's
and
the way the world works.
that is the way the world works. And there's nothing wrong with that as long as you are opening the doors for the competent people. If
Yeah.
you're opening doors for your, fool nephew who is going to waste taxpayer dollars and is going to destroy us and, make stupid errors, then I think there's moral issues that are involved.
Yeah, yeah. So with those NGOs, there's insane amounts of bloat and reckless spending that takes place there. I mean, dude, I do a lot of work in DC. The amount of money that flows through DC is categorically insane. It is
Yeah,
insane.
correct.
Um,
Correct.
so, but like, if there's an NGO receiving funds from the federal government, I think it would be wildly inappropriate if they did not have a list of things that that NGO cannot participate in or things that that money cannot go towards. Like,
Right.
if we find out that a dollar is being used to support any form of civil unrest in these United States, all funding and all funding is terminated, and you're going to get blacklisted in DC, and
Right.
every person on your board will be blacklisted. So, like, you start putting like consequences in writing for these NGOs, and it applies to like their board and the people that run these things. I think you'd see some remarkable change. But like, I mean, spending money for civil unrest overseas. I mean, I think I'm smart enough where I can kind of look at it on a case by case basis and determine,
Yeah.
if it's a good thing or bad thing. But like civil unrest in within our borders with government money, death penalty. Like, I know that might sound extreme, but that's completely insane to me.
Yeah, it is insane, and I don't think that that's too extreme for me.
No,
But here's my concern about all this, and you make some good points, and you and I agree more, and we're going to disagree on this stuff. And I do understand probably your strongest argument. You put it down here, and we can talk about it in a minute. Is if we aren't investing abroad, China, Russia, and those that oppose us are going to, lock up resources, that are against our economic interests or against our peace interests, and they will do it too. And so we are competing against others that are doing some of the same thing. But that being said, considering how much we have gone into debt in that process, how foolish we've been, how much we have overspent, our credit, our credit is gone.
I think
Um,
Moody's just downgraded us a couple weeks ago.
yeah, no, I mean we are in bad shape as a country, and I do, if BRICS and some of those other uh, alternatives to the dollar succeed, then we are effed. But
BRICS is effed. BRICS is over. That's done with. Like
yeah,
BRICS is
no,
done. Yeah.
they did collapse, but there's going to be kind of that continued pressure to go against the dollar, and we're always going to be fighting that danger. But I would like to see us be as strong a sovereign country as possible. And I think it's time for us to build America. I think it's time for us to kind of get into the golden age of what we're able to do here with, bringing as much of, our resources here, our manufacturing here. Obviously we can't do everything. We don't have all of the resources here. There will be strategic things that we need to do with other countries, but I think it's time for us to shift our focus to the United States.
Yeah. Do you remember when Trump in his first administration said for every new regulation you need to cut two?
Yeah.
You remember that?
Yeah.
I think it would be cool if he did something like for every dollar of foreign aid that goes out the door, we have to spend $5 on our shores in
Yeah.
roads, bridges,
That's
tunnels,
actually a great idea.
what have you. So, what's really interesting, and I do not give our intelligence community very much credit. I got to be honest with you, man. It's probably one of the biggest disappointments for me in the past 25 years is how
Yeah.
abhorrent they are.
I
Because
think that's I think that's probably the right timeline.
I always held those guys. Going back to 9/11, I always held those guys with like the highest esteem. Like I always thought they were the coolest bastards in the world. And then the more I meet and the more I work with and all that stuff, and it's like, man, you guys have just screwed everything up. So
Yep.
I'm sure they would take credit for this, but I guarantee you they had nothing to do with it intentionally. But when you look at what's going on in the world, and you're talking about China and economic interests and all that stuff, the Ukraine-Russia conflict, it it hasn't damaged Russia. Everyone's like, oh, we're debilitating an enemy. I don't think we've really debilitated Russia that much because their armament manufacturing capabilities right now are higher than all of Europe's combined. What it did do was expose Russia as a paper tiger. Okay. We both agree on that, I'm sure.
Yep.
Russia's not the big bad red army that we thought they were. You know what I mean? And then you look at the tariff thing with Trump, and I do think he did a really good job of globally isolating China. So that's another check I'm going to throw on the board there. All right. India was like, hey, anything that China will do for you, we will do for you. So our trade relationship with India is expanded. BRICS, that's another check with India. BRICS, basically done. Another check on the board. I think 51% 51% of all countries on this planet now use the dollar as their reserve currency, which is the highest it's ever been.
Right.
All right. Look at what Israel's done to Iran. Okay. Another paper tiger. Like, dude, that's like, a bully in a schoolyard just getting slapped and just running off crying. Israel controls the skies of Iran right now. So, which is further isolating China. So if you look at China's allies, who they have left that hasn't been exposed as a dipshit, North Korea,
Yeah.
like, they don't even
Oh,
have
yeah.
lights on at night.
No, I mean, and China is its own, paper tiger in many ways. Economically, they are, suffering. They're
Yeah.
suffering also, from a population standpoint, and and so they, their future is not bright, which is exactly why I said what I said earlier. Is let's focus on on building our strength here. And I liked your idea about, dollar versus five. If we do that, then, China, if we start to remove some of our, you know, economic love that we give them and bring more of that stuff here or shift it to other partners around the world that can produce some of those things, then, their strength diminishes quicker than if we go and spread that money and love around the world in the same way.
Yeah. The thing that concerns me about China is I think they're really good at going in, and it's like I'm more concerned about them from like an economic standpoint as it applies to them going into countries and forming partnerships with like mining and minerals and stuff like that, stuff coming out of the ground.
1000%.
I
We
think
we
they
have
do a
done such a poor job there.
I don't know that we've done any of that anywhere. I know that they
Correct.
do a really good job with that. I know they were first to Africa. They've done a tremendous job there. Dude, when my brother and I took my brother duck hunting in Nicaragua in 2005 or 2006. And we went to this river delta, and it had this big, huge Chinese sign. And I have a fantastic photo. And I'm not very photogenic, but this is a great photo of me. I probably should use it for the podcast cover.
Yeah.
Hang soy Chinese blah blah. It was a China used it as a shrimping fat. No, it's a shrimp factory where they raise shrimp in this delta, and they've been there for 20 years. So like if you look at China's like strategic economic stuff, like they're all around us. They're everywhere. They have mining and timber, mineral, whatever, rare earths, whatever that term is. They do a fantastic job of that, which is something we don't do. What China is really good at from a production standpoint is actually cheap labor, but like there's other countries that have kind of taken a chunk out of them. What they're really good is their research and development is garbage. China, you can build something, they can duplicate it in 7 days. I don't care what it is. That's where they really, really excel, is copying. They're good at that. And then, but there's no incentives in that country, to do anything, to be wonderful, to be amazing. Like in America, we have the American dream. In China, it's just like, I hope I get food, like
Well,
there's no,
yeah, I mean, listen, China is filled with the party of powerful people, right? The CCP is if you're a party member with the right status, you're running everything. And you're part of the feudal system that they've created, and the rest of the people are their slaves. And that's just that reality of what they've had there. And listen, we were very close to trying to institute that here. I mean, we were election away from that vision. We're fighting, and I say this all the time, and my audience is probably tired of it. But we were fighting against a globalist feudalism, kind of a feudalism 2.0, where we were all the serfs, and where some of your vision and me collide, and some of your position here is, I want to see as much decentralization in the world as possible. I want to see as much freedom down to the individual and liberty down to the individual, which I believe ultimately makes us stronger rather than concentrating power. And there's people that want to use America and the forces that we have to continue to kind of grow our own global power. And I want to balance that, but I want to see sovereignty on down to the family level. And I want to get these Lindsey Graham warmongers out of power. So you get the last word, brother, and then let's find out where we follow you and how we can help you.
dude. So the thing that I'm like, the sovereignty, like I'm sick of the nanny state. Like when's
Yeah.
the last time, like for everyone, like kind of like listening to this, walk around your house and take a look at everything. Why does my washer and dryer have a Wi-Fi signal? Why does my little tiny push vacuum that you track dirt in the house, you get the little push vacuum, use it. Why is that a smart vacuum? Why is that kicking off data? Like walk around your house and literally take an inventory in your head of everything in your house and how else everything's so smart. Everything we do is recorded, man, and it drives me completely and totally insane. I hate it. Yeah, man. Just I think it's up to us. No one's coming to save us. It's up to us. But at the end of the day, we live in the greatest country on this planet, and on our worst day here, it's better than any other country in the world's best day. And I
Oh,
think
I
we
could
need
not
to.
agree more, and that is a great last word, brother.
Yeah.
All right, how do we follow you? How do we support what you're doing? And I already drink all your Black Rifle coffee, so I'm in
Yeah,
on that
so
one.
my Instagram is Black Baker. That's just kind of my life. If you want to like kind of see what goes on in my head, Baker B Levitt at Twitter. I argue with strangers on Twitter all day and call them names and tell them they're stupid, man. That's what I do.
I love it. Well, good, brother. Well, thank you, man. Thanks for coming on. I
Yep.
appreciate you. I appreciate your perspective on this because I think it's reasonable, and I just want it to be balanced. So I appreciate your view. I think it's smart. And hey, to God be the glory. And we are out.
All right, man. Thank you so much for having me.
Hey, thank you for watching or listening to this show. If you are someone who listens to us on the podcast apps, please go to our Rumble channel. Even if you're not going to watch us there, we'd appreciate you hitting subscribe. We want to boost those numbers up and make sure that that channel continues to grow. But again, thank you so much for listening to us.